You sure it's not ghosts, Stephen? Stephen Daniels had worked security for nearly 6 years, mostly at bustling office complexes and shopping malls. He knew the rhythm of the night, the hum of fluorescent lights, the occasional clatter of a janitor's cart, the faint echo of his own footsteps across empty corridors. But the posting he had received last week was different: the old Harrington Building, a derelict office tower on the far edge of the city. The memo had been curt. Night shift. Check everything. No exceptions. Nothing else. He remembered the incident at his previous posting. A late-night break-in at a corporate tower had gone south. One of the junior guards panicked and ran into the street, hit by a car. Management blamed Stephen for not enforcing the protocol strictly, even though he'd followed every rule. The Harrington posting was punishment. But he tried to convince himself otherwise. Maybe a quiet building at night would be easier. Fewer people, fewer distractions. The first night, he drove up the cracked asphalt path, headlights cutting through mist that hung low over the deserted parking lot. The building looked older than the city record suggested: blackened brick, windows grimy with decades of neglect, a metal gate hanging crookedly on rusted hinges. He felt the chill of the evening air creep through his jacket as he stepped out, the wet crunch of gravel under his boots echoing unnaturally in the silence. Inside, the lobby was colder than expected. Not just cold in temperature, but in a way that felt like the walls themselves exhaled frost. The faint smell of mildew mixed with old carpet hit him, a sharp, sour tang that lingered in his nose. The security office was tiny, a windowed box with peeling paint, a faded calendar, and 2 monitors showing grainy CCTV footage. Most cameras were offline, the rest flickered with static. Stephen sank into the chair, the vinyl cracking under his weight, and ran his hands along the desk. The surface felt sticky in places, dust clinging to sweat. He checked his logbook. Nothing unusual so far. The janitor had left around 7. The elevators were quiet. Even the old air vents seemed to sigh gently, as if the building itself were breathing. Stephen rubbed his arms and tried to focus on the hum of the fluorescent lights, the only sound that made him feel anchored to reality. Hours passed. At 11:03 p.m., a faint thump echoed from the floor above. Stephen froze, fingers hovering over the radio. Another thump. Then a soft scraping, like something being dragged across concrete. He told himself it was the wind, or maybe a loose pipe. But the sound persisted, moving closer. Up in the hall outside the security office, the darkness seemed to deepen unnaturally. His chair squeaked as he adjusted his posture, trying to ignore the rising pit of unease. By midnight, the building was almost oppressively silent. The hum of the lights no longer felt comforting. It was a high-pitched whine that pricked his ears. Stephen's palms were clammy, sticky against the desk. He took a sip of lukewarm coffee and shivered. The warmth didn't travel past his chest. Every shadow seemed to stretch farther than it should, pooling around corners and curling along walls as if alive. Still, when morning came, everything looked ordinary again. He noted the noises in his report, but the day supervisor laughed. Old pipes. You'll get used to it. The second night was quieter. No footsteps, no scraping. Just that same oppressive silence pressing against his ears. Around 2 a.m., the lights flickered, once, twice, and the temperature plummeted. His breath fogged in the air for a moment before fading. He radioed it in. Might be an electrical short, or the generator. The response came with a chuckle. You sure it's not ghosts, Stephen? He didn't laugh. By the third night, Stephen felt the building's presence like a physical weight pressing against him. He arrived at 10 p.m., thermos of strong coffee in hand, boots crunching on the gravel like brittle bones. The mist wrapped around him, wet and cold, settling into his hair and coat. He could hear the faint hum of the street lamps outside, but inside the building, there was only silence, deep and unnatural. As he entered the lobby, the cold hit him immediately, creeping along his sleeves, biting through his jacket. The walls seemed to pulse slightly, breathing with the building itself. He poured a cup of coffee and sipped slowly, letting the warmth anchor him. But by 11 p.m., his eyelids grew heavy, exhaustion gnawing at him. To stay awake, he walked. He started with the second floor. The air there felt thicker somehow, damp, as though someone had been breathing in the dark. He passed rows of cubicles, chairs pushed back, papers yellowed, a phone off its hook still giving a faint, dying tone. His flashlight beam quivered as he moved it. Every sound felt amplified, the creak of the floor beneath him, the soft brushing of his sleeve against the wall, his own breathing echoing back unnaturally. By 12:30, he returned to the monitors, and froze. There were dark figures on the screen, for dark silhouettes stood in the hallway he had just walked through. Their outlines shimmered faintly through static, no features, just shapes. They didn't move, didn't sway, they just stood there. Stephen blinked hard, rubbed his eyes, and leaned closer. When he looked back, one of them had turned toward the camera. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. He grabbed his flashlight and rushed upstairs, breath shallow, forcing himself to stay calm. If someone's up there, he muttered under his breath, they're trespassing. But the hallway was empty. Cold. He could still smell something faint, like wet metal and burnt dust. The air was colder here than anywhere else in the building. When he came back down, the figures were gone from the monitors, but the cameras now showed him. Every screen. Different angles, different times, all showing him moving, sitting, staring. One screen showed him standing in the hallway still, even though he was watching from the security room. He swallowed hard. "Control, this is Daniels," he said into the radio, voice shaking. "There's something wrong with the cameras. They're showing me, in places I'm not." The response was static. Then, a whisper. Soft. Female. Right behind him. "We see you too." He spun. Nothing. Just the hum of the lights. By 2:40 a.m., the building seemed alive. The vents groaned like a throat clearing itself, and distant footsteps echoed down halls he knew were empty. He decided to make one last patrol before sunrise, hoping movement would keep him from losing his mind. Down in the basement, the air was colder, denser. The walls were wet to the touch. A low tapping came from somewhere deep within, steady, rhythmic, like someone knocking from the other side of a wall. He followed it, pulse hammering. "Hello?" His voice cracked. The tapping stopped. Then came another sound, a slow dragging, heavy and deliberate, moving closer. He turned his flashlight toward the far end of the corridor, but the beam seemed to bend, distorting the shadows. For a second, he thought he saw shapes there, human-like, standing half in the dark, half in the beam, motionless, staring. Then his radio hissed softly, the same female whisper again, "You shouldn't be here." Stephen bolted up the stairs, skipping steps 2 at a time, heart pounding against his ribs. When he reached the lobby, every monitor flickered on again, and this time, every screen showed him. But not as he was. His reflection on the screen was pale, eyes hollow, his mouth slightly open as if caught mid-scream. Behind that reflection, in every feed, were people, hundreds of them, all standing still, their faces blurred. Watching. He stumbled backward, knocking over his chair. No, 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 no. He ran. By dawn, Stephen was sitting in his car, shaking, engine idling, headlights still cutting through the thinning fog. His hands wouldn't stop trembling. He didn't even remember unlocking the gate or getting inside. Later that morning, he told management everything, the shadows, the figures, the voices, the CCTV anomalies. They listened with polite half-smiles. Buildings like that can mess with your head, one of them said. You're overworked, Daniels. Maybe take a few days. But when he asked for them to check the security footage, they called back hours later saying the files were gone. Nothing was recorded those nights, they claimed. Might have been a system glitch. That was the moment Stephen knew he would never step foot there again. He typed out his resignation and handed it in without another word. As he left the office, he overheard one of the supervisors murmur to another, "That's the fourth one this year."